All right, it's Monday, December 9th, 2024, and Donald J. Trump making big news this weekend, going on Meet the Press, pledging to hold the drug companies responsible, Big Pharma, and he's not messing around. We have the details. Also, one of the best clips you're going to see all week, Democrat John Fetterman going on The View and bringing a dose of reality to these uber left-wing hosts. You could see Joy Behar's face turn bright red as John Fetterman explains how Democrats weaponized the justice system against Donald Trump. This is as good of a clip as you'll see. We have it for you. And what is happening in Syria, in Romania? Major shakeups in the Middle East, power dynamic, major shakeups across NATO. What just happened? And Trump warning the Biden administration, warning these war hawks in D.C., in his own party, stay out of it. Leave it alone. Let's see how it plays out. Well, you won't believe what's happened since. Also, we have news on the J6 hostages, prisoners, Trump making major news this weekend. We have it all. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. Democrat Senator from Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, goes on The View and brings a dose of reality to these uber partisan hosts, saying that Trump's New York trial was politically motivated, that the Biden DOJ has been weaponized, that under Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, the justice system in this country is corrupted, it's been weaponized, and if it wasn't Donald Trump, Fetterman says those charges would never have been brought. Now, unbeknownst to Fetterman, he called out Behar to her face, going on to condemn people who have been gleeful, he said, calling Trump a convicted felon. Apparently, though, not realizing that Joy Behar and all of these View hosts are the worst possible offenders of this. Every single show calling Donald Trump a convicted felon dozens of times. Watch this.
It is his son, after all, and people do have sympathy for that. But a lot of people are angry with him about it. What do you say?
Oh, well, I think it's undeniable that the case against Hunter Biden was really politically motivated. But I also think it's true that the trial in New York for Trump that was political as well too. Now it's that, and in both cases, I think a pardon is appropriate, and I really think collectively, America's confidence in these kinds of institutions have been damaged by these kinds of cases. And we cannot allow these kinds of institutions to be weaponized against our political opponents. And it's very clear both trials were politically motivated and weaponized that on the other side.
They'll say that about the J6 people too, though, right? That's what they're going to say on the other side. That is weaponized also.
I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about the New York trial. And now the Democrats on our side there were some that were gleeful, calling it like now he's a convicted felon and those things. And now for our party, we were talking about criminal justice, and we are now talking about second chances. And now all of a sudden now you're like, well, he's a convicted felon and all these things. And now clearly, again, both of those trials, the Hunter Biden one and the trial in New York for Trump, that was politically motivated. And those kinds of charges would have never been brought unless one side could realize that they could weaponize that.
Senator, many of Trump's...
And it should be noted that the case Fetterman's referring to was brought by none other than corrupt DA Alvin Bragg, the same DA that's currently prosecuting and trying to send to prison American hero Daniel Penny. And this ties into our next story. President-elect Trump made major news this weekend, holding and conducting his first long-form interview since winning the presidency 4 weeks ago, sitting with NBC News for over an hour this weekend and delivering a masterclass to all Republicans, showing them how you handle the legacy corporate press, the adversarial press. This is how it's done. And causing social media to break out in joy after confirming that he and his new HHS secretary, RFK Jr., will be coming for Big Pharma and will be holding them accountable. Watch.
Let me ask you about RFK Jr. He has obviously talked about his skepticism of vaccines. He's expressed opposition to childhood vaccines. Do you want to see childhood vaccines eliminated?
if they're dangerous for the children. Look,
So possibly?
when you look at some of the problems, when you look at what's going on with disease and sickness in our country, something's wrong.
Are you talking about autism?
Well, if you take a look at autism, you go back 25 years, autism was almost non-existent. It was, 1 out of 100,000, and now it's close to 1 out of 100.
Well,
I mean, what's happening? If they can find it. Now, I did something the other night that was a little unusual. At Mar-a-Lago, I called the drug companies, the top drug companies, and I called RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz and some of his people. And I said, let's all get together and let's figure out where we're going. Because we're going to do a lot of things. Number one, we're going to reduce prices because the middleman makes more money than the drug companies, in all fairness to the drug companies. There's a middleman that nobody even knows who they are. And you look at our drug prices, they're much higher than the prices for the same medicine, for the same stuff. So we met, and we met for a long time. And we talked about pricing, and we talked about vaccines, in terms of what happens. We talked about pesticides. We talked about everything. And I think a lot of good things are going to come from him. And he's not going to upset any system. He's not going to upset this. He's not looking to, to reinvent the wheel totally. But when you look at the numbers, we really don't have a very healthy country.
Well, sir, going back 25 years, studies show that there is no link between vaccines and autism. And yet it sounds like you are open to the possibility of him looking
I'm
at
open to
getting
anything.
rid of them?
I think somebody has to find out. If you go back 25 years ago, you had very little autism. Now you have it. I mean,
Well, they say because they're better at identifying it.
1 in 100,000, and now it's 1 in 100. That's a pretty bad number.
Childhood vaccines.
I mean,
have
something is going on. I don't know if it's vaccines. Maybe it's chlorine in the water, right? People are looking at a lot of different things.
Childhood vaccines.
I want them to look at everything.
Everything. So childhood vaccines have prevented about 4 million deaths around the world every year.
I think that's
so
great.
Isn't that?
I'm all for it. I think it's great. Hey, look, I'm not against vaccines. The polio vaccine is the greatest thing. If somebody told me get rid of the polio vaccine, they're going to have to work real hard to convince me. I think certain vaccines are incredible, but maybe some aren't. And if they aren't, we have to find out. But when you talk about autism, because it was brought up, and you look at the amount we have today versus 20 or 25 years ago, it's pretty scary.
Well, again, scientists say that's because they've gotten better at identifying it, and there's no link in
but
studies.
The drug companies are going to be working with RFK Jr. and he's been an interesting guy to me. I've watched him for 25 years, and he's been an interesting guy.
And who can argue with that? If they're safe, then let's confirm that. Let's find out. And RFK is the perfect person to unpack the layers of bureaucracy and corruption that have been perpetuating all of this. Perfect person to get to the bottom of it all. And Trump's not messing around. There's a reason that Biden's considering a blanket pardon for none other than Anthony Fauci. In the U.S., 50% of teens are obese. 20% of teens have fatty liver disease. The U.S. is 4% of the world's population, yet we produce 70% of the world's pharmaceutical profits. Imagine that. And we're 60th in life expectancy. That's a problem. You can't argue there's something wrong here. The current system is failing us, whether it's purposely done or not. The American people fully support the MAHA agenda, Make America Healthy Again. And Trump didn't stop there, telling NBC that he will be pardoning the J6 protesters on day one.
I'm going to look at everything. We're going to look at individual cases, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking first day.
Issue these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
By the way, they've been in there for years, and they're in a filthy, disgusting place that shouldn't even be allowed to be open.
And holding the J6 Select Committee accountable. Hell yes. Because quickly realize these people, many of them still in prison for over 3 years, almost 4 years now. We're talking moms and dads, grandmothers, grandfathers, peaceful, patriotic Americans who did nothing but peacefully enter the Capitol. Many of them were ushered in by Capitol Police. This is the definition of a miscarriage of justice. And Trump goes further, saying that Liz Cheney should be investigated, he said. Benny Thompson, Adam Kinzinger should all be investigated, that all of the members on that committee, he says, should go to jail for what they did, deleting all the evidence, all of the testimony, illegally deleting a year and a half of testimony, saying it may actually be a good idea for Joe Biden to pardon Liz Cheney. Watch this.
Let me ask you about some of this new reporting. NBC News is reporting that President Biden is considering giving preemptive pardons to the likes of Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and Anthony Fauci. If President Biden doesn't issue those pardons, do you think they are going to wish that he had?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think?
I think everybody anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to
No,
jail?
not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on drill, baby, drill.
When you say that,
on
it carries
strengthening
weight, though. You've tapped these people to lead the Justice Department and FBI.
They can do whatever they want.
Okay.
Biden can give him a pardon if he wants to, and maybe he should. Just remember, unselect committee, a year and a half of sworn testimony, and after getting all of the testimony, they deleted it. And they destroyed almost everything. There's nothing left. It's unprecedented.
And they denied
If you
doing
do that in a civil case, you go to jail.
They did.
Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Liz Cheney should be investigated for destroying, allegedly, all of the testimony that they spent over a year recording? Let me know in the comments what you think. In another story, major news out of the Middle East as the capital of Syria, Damascus, has fallen. President Assad has fled, receiving safe passage to Russia along with his family. This brings an end to the secular 50-plus year reign of the Assad family, something that the Obama administration tried and failed to do with the Arab Spring. But now, just weeks before Donald Trump's sworn in as president, a major realignment occurs. Out of nowhere, by the way. Anyone who says this was organic is lying to you. This is a very well-funded rebellion backed by Turkey, backed by Israel, and NATO contributing weapons and intel and troops in some cases. And the former leader of ISIS is in the region, folks, possibly looking to become the new leader of Syria. This is crazy. And there's two ways to look at this, right? The first way, the way many Republicans are viewing it, that geopolitically, this is good. This is a good thing, they say. It's going to help the Trump administration finish what they started in his first term, bringing peace to the Middle East. Iran's just had their knees chopped off. All their proxies are being destroyed one by one by one. The octopus has no tentacles left. That's what's happened, and that's true. But the other truth is that it's also being done to push Russia further into a corner, cause major conflict with Russia. They continue to escalate all of this just weeks before Trump comes into office, making a major mess, wreaking havoc right before Trump comes in. And it is a mess over there right now. Last night, there's been reports that Israel's now bombing targets in Syria. Why? Well, reportedly, those are the chemical weapon depots. They don't want this new rebel/Al-Qaeda coalition to have access to chemical weapons. Is that true? I don't know. It's what we're hearing, but we do know for sure is Donald Trump's position on all of this. Coming out yesterday, releasing this statement on social media saying opposition fighters in Syria, in an unprecedented move, have totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive and are now on the outskirts of Damascus. Now, since then, they've taken the capital. Trump says Russia, because they're so tied up in Ukraine, and with the loss there of over 600,000 soldiers, seems incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they protected for years. This is where former President Barack Obama refused to honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand, and all hell broke out with Russia stepping in. But now they are, like possibly Assad himself, being forced out, which he has now. And it may actually be the best thing that can happen to them. There was never much of a benefit in Syria for Russia other than to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess, but is not our friend. And the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. So Trump making his position perfectly clear, non-intervention. This is as anti-war a position as you'll hear from a U.S. president. This is something Kamala Harris would have walked us right into, and we know that's true because Joe Biden is doing exactly that, launching airstrikes last night against ISIS targets in Syria. even though the rebels that we're supporting are ISIS fighters. All of this is crazy. Lindsey Graham coming out in support of this, but telling Biden airstrikes aren't enough. We need to send U.S. troops into Syria now, he says. How this guy gets reelected every 6 years, I have no idea. And to top it off, Joe Biden is now promising to send billions of dollars in aid to the new Syrian government. You can't make this up. Watch.
With a new constitution, a new government that serves all Syrians. And this process will be determined by the Syrian people themselves. And the United States will do whatever we can to support them, including through humanitarian relief to help restore Syria after more than a decade of war and generations of brutality by the Assad family.
There is so much happening right now, it's hard to keep up with it all. There was just a coup basically in Romania canceling the vote over there, a NATO country. Lots happening. We're going to do our best to keep you updated. That wraps up this episode though. Like, subscribe, we'll see you next time.